Tom Harris writing in the Telegraph saying actually a really good result for Reform coming in third, because normally speaking Reform were nowhere in Scotland, were they? Tom Slater's here. You know, it wasn't a place that they had even any ambition, really.
No, this is something that came out of the clear blue. I remember in the run-up to the general election last summer, there was already starting noises that people were finding kind of on the doorstep, or when people were going out to report on particular races in Scotland, that a surprising number of people were bringing up Farage, were bringing up Reform. Obviously it didn't turn into very much at those general elections, but it was always clear that there were inroads to be made there. The issue of Brexit is kind of behind us, so that it's not going to necessarily affect them in quite the same way. It's also worth remembering there is a substantial portion of Scotland that did vote. Yeah. A substantial proportion of the SNP voted Leave, particularly its working class base. And so there was always going to be an opportunity there if it was properly seized. And whilst, of course, this is being written up as a humbling of Reform, you know, in this speech, saying that, you know, we've sent them packing, their divisive politics and so on and so forth. But at the same time, as you were saying, this is a very respectable result from a party that were nowhere really in Scotland up until really a few months
And certainly,
ago.
I mean, you wouldn't expect the Tories to do well in Scotland because they don't normally anyway. But again, they're beaten into fourth place. So, you know, all of the machinations that they say they're going to do doesn't appear to be cutting through either. Let's get a voice note from Jay.
Morning, guys. Great show as always. Regarding the whole Zia Yusuf thing, I think Nigel needs to come back hard now. I think the bridges with Ben Habib have been burnt, which is a shame, but maybe Nigel and Rupert should get together in private, sit down, chuck everything out and say, right, let's start afresh. We both want what's best. Nigel says, I'm running the party. Rupert, you're the person we want back. A lot of the fans want back, the members, etc. We need to get together in private and work something out. Go and have a drink together, sort it out.
Well, funnily enough, Nigel Farage said that last night in an interview that he did, where he said, we can't have people who want to have their, fights with us in public. I mean, that was what the falling out between him and Rupert Lowe was all about, because he felt that Rupert Lowe had gone sort of public on things that they were discussing internally. And, again, like everybody, I mean, in your job, in my job, if people that you're having conversations with suddenly start telling the world about what those conversations are, take you back to Prince Harry, people tend to go, well, do you know what? If you're going to start leaking everything that I'm telling you, then we're not going to have a conversation anymore. No, it's going to be the end.
No, absolutely. There's such.
It's about trust, isn't it?
It's about trust, and it's important in any organisation, but particularly if you're a political party, you need that level of discipline, all being on message, not allowing your internal fights to become public knowledge. All of that's pretty essential. I think in the case of Rupert Lowe, I think he's starting to think that maybe was bigger than the party in a strange sort of way. I mean, it's one of those things where just because you've got a big social media following, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily as essential to the political project. And there was these great polls that came out at the time he was ousted where, even the vast majority of Reform voters don't even know who he is. So it's one of those things where people can easily get a bit too big for their boots.
Exactly. And I mean, that's really what happened, because it all happened before the big local elections in May, and because Reform swept the board, it was clear that actually whatever the Rupert Lowe fallout was, it didn't affect people's willingness to vote for Reform. So, it's a very young party. I'm not sitting here pretending that there's nothing problematic going on. We'll be talking to Isabel Oakeshott about it. We've been trying to get somebody on from Reform this morning. They don't want to come on for whatever reason, and I think that's a mistake. I think they should have put somebody on. But, we move on, and they will move on, and this will be just another bump in the road, probably. But they do need to get their act together.
Yeah, and there is a certain point in which this merry-go-round of people coming in and out of the party is going to start cutting through. It's going to start looking like a bit too chaotic, a bit too all over the place. I don't think we're at that point yet, but at the same time it's something that they do need to get a grip of if they want to be taken seriously.
Having said that, I mean, nevertheless, you can see the Labour Party and the Tory Party have also had all of these kinds of problems, and they're a lot older than Reform are. I mean, look at the infighting going on in Labour at the moment. There's backbenchers all over the place, wanting Starmer out. There's people backing Angela Rayner to take over. There's people saying, Ed Miliband needs to win the fight against Rachel Reeves. There's all sorts of factionalisation, because that's what politics is all about. And it seems to be, I suppose, a lot more telescopic when it comes to reforms. There's only a few of them. And suddenly, if there's 200 people falling out with each other, it's not such a big story. If there's only 4 of you, suddenly it's a lot more sharp and in focus.
And that's why it's funny seeing the Tories. Obviously, they're trying to make hay out of this. Why wouldn't they? But at the same time, it's like if you're talking about backbiting and infighting and constant regicide, I don't think the Tory party have got much of a leg to stand on.
I really don't think they've got many lessons that they can teach anyone. No.